The internal edge is for high achievers, high performers. So give a little background. I spent 15 years of my career as a therapist, as a mental health therapist, specializing in trauma therapy, working with individual clients. And throughout my career, I've worked more with leaders and entrepreneurs and executives and doing executive psychology coaching. And being an entrepreneur and a high achiever myself and working more with people in these industries and just with this type of drive and vision, one, really have a heart for them. I see myself in them. And two, what I have come to find, and again, relating in a lot of my own personal journey and story, is that high achievers and high performers look like they have it all together on the outside, get all the praise and all the accolades, which becomes a vicious beast because it then reinforces a lot of the behaviors that lead to burnout. But they look like they have it all together on the outside, but are silently struggling oftentimes on the inside. And that could be struggling with feeling responsible for everything. That could be silently struggling with their own anxiety around taking on the weight of the world, or anxiety around feeling like they're have to meet these big aspirational goals and dreams, or just always going to the next thing. You know, okay, well, I did this project. Now it's time to write my book. And now it's time to do this next big achievement. And then there's just this low grade anxiety and burnout that happens over time. And at some point we crash.
This is the Play Your Position podcast, where we huddle up, call the plays, and inspire you to run your ball into the end zone. Are you ready to score more game-winning touchdowns in your life, business, and career? Then listen up, because it's game time, baby. Now, here's your host, MaryLou Kaiser.
Hello, Team PYP. Welcome to another episode of the Play Your Position podcast. I'm your host, MaryLou Kaiser, author of It's Not You, It's the Algorithm: How to Slow Your Scroll and Start Paying Attention to Your Life Again. A must-read for anyone who feels fed up with the nonstop digital distractions in all of our lives today. It's great for parents who are concerned about phone and device addiction in their kids, and let's be honest, themselves too. And it's for industry leaders asking smart questions about AI and what it could mean for their business and culture. Grab your copy using the link in the show notes below. All right, on to today's conversation. It is a powerful one, especially for high achievers who look like you have it all together on the outside, but don't always feel that way on the inside. I'm joined by Mandy Morris, a former trauma therapist turned executive psychology coach. And we talk about nervous system regulation, old programming, burnout, anxiety, and what's really going on beneath the surface for people who carry a lot of responsibility and ambition. And Team PYP, I know that this is kind of you, if not completely you, because we are high achievers. Now, before we begin, I want to note that this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only. It's not intended to diagnose, treat, or replace professional mental health or medical care. If you're experiencing acute distress or need personal support, please reach out to a qualified professional or trusted resource. That said, this conversation may help you see yourself more clearly, begin to understand your patterns with more compassion, and start asking better questions about what your body and nervous system have been trying to tell you. If you've ever wondered why success doesn't always bring peace, or why pushing harder isn't working the way it used to, you're in the right place. Time for kickoff, team. Are you ready? Because I know I am. Let's go. All right, Mandy. So first of all, thank you for joining me here today on the Play Your Position podcast. I absolutely love the work you're doing in the world, and I'm excited for you to share some of the big lessons that you're teaching around leadership and trauma and the internal edge
Mhm.
with showing up to a chaotic world. So welcome.
Thanks. I appreciate you having me on, and I love the work you do too. And I think what we do together complements each other well.
I think so. So let's just jump into it. Leadership and trauma, an interesting combination to focus your path on at this point. Talk to us about what's going on. Why is this an important topic for people to pay attention to and perhaps even study, given the current conditions in our world, what's going on in the job market, and essentially what leaders are facing every day?
Yeah. So one of the things that I've been stressing to people lately is that we don't have problems, we have patterns. What I mean by that is that about approximately 95% of our brain is subconscious. So what you and I are doing right here, right now, MaryLou, and everyone who's listening to us when they're listening to us, that's the conscious. And that is only 5% of our brain. And so if you've ever had an experience of, I know I shouldn't have done that, but I did it anyway. I know I should have done X, Y, and Z, but I didn't do it. Or why did I do that? Or why did I think like all of these things that bypasses our logic, the
Mhm.
intellectual part of our brain, that is because your subconscious took over. So what does this have to do with leadership and trauma? Well, one, let's demystify the word trauma because that gets a bad rap and it's a buzzword that's been overused and people don't like it. So the
True.
moment someone says that word, defenses go up and people are like, well, I don't have trauma. I'm not going to listen to this. And then they click off. And so the word trauma literally means wound. I talk about this in my TEDx talk, and we all have them. We have psychological, emotional wounds, and there's three major misconceptions about what a wound is. So I'll interchange those words from trauma and wound. They mean the same thing, but it trauma isn't just the big stuff. It's also the the smaller things. It's anything that made you question your worth, safety,
Mm,
or ability to trust,
okay.
and it's also the good things we needed that we never got. And all of this comes dressed up as like normal childhood stuff. So a lot of our wounds happen before the age of 10.
Yes.
It's not what happens to us, it's what happens inside of us.
Mm,
And these wounds aren't a logical issue. We can't think our way out of it. So these are the main three misconceptions about it. So now to get back to your question about leadership, it's really important that we learn to bring what's subconscious conscious and understand ourselves and elevate our levels of self-awareness because we can't fix what we don't understand.
true.
In my,
Yeah.
in my work with people, and specifically leaders, entrepreneurs, high achievers, when they come to me, it's usually because there's some sort of stuck place or an area of growth or whatever it may be, or they're having some sort of internal pressure they don't know how to deal with. And all of this is going to track back to a some sort of adaptation that they learned to have when they were very, very young that got them to where they are, and then now
Mhm.
it's no longer serving them well. One of my favorite Canadian physicians and best-selling authors, Gabor Mate, he talks about how entrepreneurship is a trauma response.
Wow,
And
that is I can relate to that.
right? Yeah, and so we have a lot of our skill sets from the difficult things that we went through, which is why a lot of leaders and high achievers are so driven. And it's also what creates a lot of our burnout. It's also what creates a lot of our being exhausted, but also being wired at the same time. And so when we can understand our patterns and
Mhm.
understand what's really going on underneath our behavior, we're going to discover how we can actually reach new levels of success, new levels of freedom and peace that we never knew we had. Because what might look like a hiring issue may actually be your own abandonment issues.
Isn't that interesting?
What might
Yeah.
actually be a I can't get organized and get focused issue could actually be a procrastination issue because you're having so much anxiety around rejection. Like, so there's all of these things that are going on at a much bigger level that a lot of mindset work doesn't deal with. And so it masks symptoms, but it doesn't get to the root cause.
That is such an interesting thing to talk about because mindset has been sold to us for a long time. If you've been around people listening, you've probably read a book around mindset, taken a class around mindset, or seen social media feed full of mindset, and nothing wrong with mindset. It's an important piece. But if it is masking the true cause of why somebody continues to repeat patterns, and I'd like you to identify perhaps the top 3 patterns that you see people that listeners can relate to and go, that's me. You mentioned obviously procrastination. That is definitely a pattern in a lot of people. They keep putting off something, I can get to it later, or they just don't want to deal with it. Mm-hmm. And it isn't the thing itself, as you just said, right? It's actually some internal something. Yeah. But what are some common patterns around this whole idea that listeners would be able to say, oh, yeah, that's me?
Yeah. Another one I see a lot, and I see it in myself. And so it's this, I'm going to do it all because if I don't do it, it's not going to get done, or it's not going to get done right. Mm-hmm. And it's this, the intention is out of the intentions are good. You want to see results and you want to get certain things done and have it done well, but it really comes from a place of needing to be in control. And that often is a result from times when you weren't in control or didn't have choice. And now there's this, this subconscious overcompensation for that. And so you don't let yourself delegate out, or you don't let yourself put some of these things that you need to do into the hands of others so you can free up your time. So that's a big one. And I think a cousin to that is boundaries. And this can look like different things for leaders and high achievers. I know for me, it was I'm not going to have clients on Fridays. Well, how did that work out? Not great. So, yeah, I would still schedule clients on Fridays, or one of my clients who has a hard time getting their clients' credit card information, or having certain lines with their clients when it comes to, contracts and requirements and things like that. And both my situation and this client and this one client represents a lot of clients that I'm thinking of.
The all-in-one.
That I'm thinking of, that comes from a place of scarcity of what if I lose this client or this person? Yeah. And that's a real issue, and that comes from a really deep-seated belief from fear of not having enough.
Yeah. Yeah. That I can relate to that one. And also the delegation piece and again, you said something at the beginning of this conversation that for me was a big light bulb moment about entrepreneurship is a trauma response. And when you think about it like that, it makes so much sense, because when you do go out on your own, there's this thought process, and it is an illusion to some degree that I'm in charge, I'm going to get, I don't have to listen to anybody bossing me around. And yet what ends up happening is you now need to become the person who is asking other people to do things for you, what is that? The definition of a boss.
Right.
And that transition, I have talked to a lot of leaders over the years on this podcast who had to make that switch. And sometimes it worked for them. And sometimes they realized this is not for me. I don't want to be in charge of other people or have the responsibility of someone being able to pay their mortgage because it's on me. And so in today's current situation, Mandy, we are experiencing massive, massive amounts of two things at the same time. Stagnation, being stuck, not making decisions because of the chaos that is perceived out there, and also massive amounts of change happening very, very fast. So when you are working with leaders who find themselves in this space, which essentially we all are, what is the path to go forward so that we're not just spinning our wheels all the time or waiting it out the way some people do? Well, I'm just going to wait for the storm to pass. Well, we all have seen the footage of people who say, I'm going to wait for the storm to pass, and then it sweeps their house away with them in it, right? So I know there isn't an answer, but again, you have a perspective and a close-up view of these patterns because you've worked with so many people for as long as you have to be able to, I think, articulate what do we do?
Yeah. It's a great question. And yeah, it's so complicated. And this is where with my internal edge group that I do, one of the things that I incorporate in that I believe is a missing piece to a lot of the leadership development and even personal and professional growth work is the nervous system reset part of things. So we are not thinking beings that feel. We are feeling beings that think.
Ooh.
And if someone tells you otherwise, they are wrong. Because the first thing that lights up in the brain when we have any experience or interaction is the emotional center part of our mind. And when we walk into a room, that's where you can feel the vibe of someone or the vibe of a room well before you even know what or know how to make sense of what's going on, right? It's because your nervous system is picking up on energy, right? And so what we're feeling in our world right now is a lot of fear and uncertainty around the pace of what's happening and of we don't know what the future holds. We don't know if we're dispensable or not. We don't know what's going to happen in our world economically or with, what's happening with our politics or with the war or with AI or all of these things. It's so much. And one of the things that I talk about, or I've been talking about lately, is how the human nervous system is going to become the new bottleneck if we don't do something about it.
Ooh, okay.
And so we have to, just because, so it's this art of staying on top of things, but not living in a state of urgency and controlling the controllables. And learning how to regulate your own nervous system. And that requires being more attuned to our body and our body's response. So we've been so conditioned to ignore our body's cues that we don't even know we're stressed anymore until we're in a health crisis.
Wow.
And so what's going to happen is if we don't start to slow ourselves down and get back into our own bodies, we're going to have a world run by AI with humans in health crises, is what I believe. And so, which is part of why, one of the reasons why I think So Free, that the app that I'm sure we'll talk about at some point, my brother and I created, is going to be so helpful, is that we need to be able to regulate our fight or flight system. It was not designed for this world, and yet we have it.
Yeah.
And so what do? We need to start taking care of ourselves on the physiological level so that we have access to the parts of our brain that need to think. Because if we don't do that, we're not going to be able to be clear and be innovative and do the things we want to do because we have a jacked up nervous system.
All right, it is halftime here at the Play Your Position podcast, and today's episode is brought to you by It's Not You, It's the Algorithm. If you've been feeling like life's on autopilot, checking boxes, chasing alerts, wondering where the day went, this book is your mirror and your map. It's not about quitting tech, it's about reclaiming yourself from it. Short chapters, sharp insights, and a lot of truth designed for busy brains who want to think again. Grab your copy through the link in the show notes and start paying attention to your life again. So, team, I don't know if you've ever heard anybody talk about this the way Mandy is, and I hope you're taking notes. I am taking mental notes because it's a new way of looking at. There's a couple of things that you mentioned, and then I do want you to talk about your app because it is a beautiful app. It works. It's incredible. The trauma response or the wound response is there. We carry it with us. I've heard it say, the biggest trauma is being born. Okay, let's just get that out on the table, right? And then there's all these things that happen that we aren't conscious about. You mentioned being up until about the age 10. At 7 to 10 is when consciousness begins, according to science.
Yeah.
And then it feels like the rest of our life is trying to go back and fix all that, or at least learn about how to move forward without it controlling us the way it once did. And so in an uncertain world, which we certainly live in right now, the impact is growing, isn't it, on our ability to even, I think we're feeling, at least I can speak for myself, I sometimes feel so much that overwhelms me, and then I can't think at all. And so then that like flight response comes in. I just want to run away from it all and disappear for a while. And I know a lot of people do that. The whole ghosting epidemic, whether it's in a romantic relationship or it's in the hiring process where somebody's strung along thinking, oh, I'm going to get hired, and then poop, the whole conversation just vanishes.
Mm-hmm.
Aren't these all symptoms of this big problem that you're describing? So developing an app, which is also a dichotomy, because on the one hand, you got to go on your phone for it, and the phone is a source of a lot of this input, right?
Right.
But it's also so well designed and so helpful. So talk about the evolution of So Free. What was it that made you and your brother want to put your time and energy into it? Because what I like about that story, Mandy, is it shows that the creativity to solve a pain point is very much alive right now, despite all the chaos and people kind of saying, well, maybe I need to wait. No, if you have an idea, pursue it, because what Mandy's about to share with you is a pretty amazing creative endeavor. And then talk about how it's helping people.
Sure. So years ago, on a run one day, I had this idea, and it came from my work as a clinician doing EMDR. And EMDR is a type of trauma therapy, and it uses a very simple technique called bilateral stimulation. And all that means is it makes the left and right side of the brain talk to each other in this rhythmic motion. And that technique in and of itself makes your nervous system calm down pretty quickly. And we see this in real life all the time. There's neuroscience behind walking it off. That's bilateral. Parents who naturally sway their babies back and forth, that's an intuitive bilateral stimulation motion, right? Self-soothing. If someone came into my office and they were in a stress response or got flooded with emotion for telling me something that they wanted to share, or were starting to have an anxiety attack, I'm 100% confident I could get them out of that response and back to a pretty good state of balance in about 60 seconds using bilateral stimulation in my office on my own. And so on my run, I was like, why do people not know about this? I didn't even know about this technique until I became trained as an EMDR clinician. And everyone should have this. When I went through my own EMDR therapy and learned about the technique by itself, I mean, it was a lifesaver, game changer for me. And so that was my first thought, is why isn't this accessible to everybody? And then my second thought was, why isn't this combined with our technology? And what if we could help people catch stress before it takes over by reading biometrics and helping people become more aware? So I brought this idea to my brother, who has spent his whole career in the tech industry and develops tech and is an architect of technology and builder, and that's his expertise and world. And wasn't sure if he was going to get it or understand it, or if it was even a good idea. Because sometimes I have all these ideas that I think are amazing to me, and then I don't know how people are going to take it. And so, but he liked it, and we decided to start moving forward with it. And but we were both business owners, and life happens and we get busy, and it kind of fell by the wayside a little bit. Uh, we had been working on it for a while and put it on pause. And then Thanksgiving Day of 2022, we unexpectedly lost our oldest brother, Dan. And that loss really shook our world, and it was devastating for our whole family. And in the months following, we decided that we needed to really move forward with this app, and we needed it, doing this for our brother. And also, grief has a way of putting things in perspective for what matters most. And we really want people to have some form of relief when stress happens, when crisis happens, because it never happens at good times, and it's unpredictable,
It
you know?
is.
And so that was the catalyst. And so we spent the last 3 years getting the patent pending on the technology, working on the app, all these things. And so it is now in the App Store, and it will reset your nervous system in under 2 minutes using bilateral stimulation. We're really excited about it.
And you should be. And I, full disclosure, am a user of it. I got it on my phone, and it's the whole EMDR thing. It sounds too simple to be true. Like, how can you reset somebody, bring them down? But it does work.
Mhm.
And our brains, I think that's a frontier that is fascinating to me. And it is not really my lane the way it is yours. But I'm so grateful there are people like you who have these aha moments and say, what can I do that could bring what I've benefited from to a larger audience? And you and your brother have done that. So just on behalf of myself and everybody listening, thank you for not only having the idea to begin with, but for pursuing it, especially during COVID, because 2022, right?
Yeah.
And I also think that something powerful about your story is that sometimes in our greatest moments of loss and grief come the most amazing transformations.
Yeah.
And it's easy to get lost in the sorrow and the pain.
Mhm.
And I personally believe we have to embrace that and not push it away or ignore it. Because I'm talking for myself here. I didn't address the grief and trauma of my divorce for 5 years, and I suffered immensely because of it, because I refused on some subconscious level to really go there. And it wasn't until I did, it breaks us open. And so when you talk to audiences, Mandy, when you're working with leaders in your Internal Edge program, which I want you to talk about next, what are some of the ways that you guide people into feeling safe enough to say, I can look my grief and sorrow and and wounds in the face and work through them instead of letting them be in control of what I do?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very, very beautifully said. And the only way forward is through, unfortunately, and fortunately,
Right.
because one of the things, especially with I'm an executive psychology coach, but my training is as a therapist, is that we're already carrying the things that we're suffering with. And when we allow ourselves to learn how to be with our feelings and to start to learn how to see what we're experiencing in a different way, that our nervous system, our difficult emotions, even the inner critic in our mind, that it's not a monster. These things aren't bad. They're all trying to help us in some way. And when we learn more about ourselves and can have that compassion and learn how to be with ourself, and we learn how to do that through regulating our nervous system and then being able to listen, through understanding what we've been through and rewiring old negative beliefs that don't serve us well anymore. When we can do those things, then we get back to ourself. We're carrying around versions of ourself that are either very armored and protective or filtered down and watered down. And it's not really who we are. And that misalignment is why we feel burnout and stress and pressure. So we're not living in the freedom of who we are. And that affects us on all levels. And so when we can do the subconscious pattern or the subconscious pattern rewiring and the nervous system reset, the combination of the two to get back to self, that's where the magic happens.
And that's what you do in Internal Edge?
We do in the Internal Edge, yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Do you believe that you are at that place in your life, that you have this at this point and have, when you wake up in the morning, are you saying to yourself, yeah, this is myself. I have found this beautiful sweet spot with what I talk about and what I'm teaching in the Eternal Edge?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So some days better than others,
True.
right?
Honest. Yep.
And I've never felt more like myself than I have now.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And the old wiring it still comes up, right? It still comes up. I think about, back in October, what are we in? We're in March of 2026, October of 2025, 2 weeks before my TEDx talk. And all those voices of why I shouldn't do it and all of the not good enoughs and all of that just got real loud all of a sudden. And but I know that my ability to work through that and to get on the other side is so much quicker now.
Yes.
It doesn't last as long. And because I know what it is, I understand it. I understand that fear that I feel isn't that I shouldn't do it. It's really just protection because of my old fears of needing to belong and fit in, and things like that I've struggled with in my life. And so I'm able to see it for what it is and get to the other side so much quicker than I used to. So no, I don't. Anyone who says that, yeah, I'm great, I don't believe it for a minute, because there's always growth and life's hard, and it's kind of we're this onion. I feel like Shrek, pulling back the layers.
Yeah.
But I have never felt more like myself.
Yeah, and that's a beautiful way of putting it. I think that with that ability to recognize, oh, I've experienced this before. I know what this is. That takes practice to get there, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like, it's not something people who are listening to this or watching this, it's one thing to say it. It's another thing to have gone through the process of being able to recognize that I'm not good enough. Who am I to be doing a TEDx? Who am I to be launching a business? Who am I to be creating a new product or starting something new or moving to a different state? Whatever it may be, something that's big and different and also is going against perhaps what the culture says you're supposed to be doing. I was just having that conversation with some younger people who are hitting a milestone birthday, and all of a sudden they're flooded with, well, by now I should have,
Mm.
be thinking about marriage, kids, buying a house, and all this stuff. And I'm thinking, wow, we still, this is so real for everybody, no matter what stage. And because of the internet and the social feeds, all of this is mixed in together. So we're seeing, this is one of my things that I work with, is when you're seeing people who are 20 posting things and people who are 80 posting things and everybody in between, and it's all swirling around, there isn't that that definition anymore of what you can do stuff at 70 or 30 that in a generation ago wasn't even thinkable because everything was so defined. And I think that is playing into the dichotomy of our nervous system being hijacked and also going, wow, I have the ability to do something different.
Right.
I think about my parents, and all what we're talking about today, I think would just be so foreign to them because it was not part of the context of their worldview.
Yeah.
So what do you want people to be thinking about, Mandy, as we continue to march forward into 2026 and beyond? You've mentioned work on that nervous system, find a way to do it, whether it's through an app, a program like yours, and I highly recommend the Internal Edge. I personally haven't been through it, but I've watched Mandy create it and I've heard people talk about it. So it's definitely worth your time. What else can we do to be able to get out of any kind of hijacking that may happen quicker, so that our lives feel more fulfilled and less chaotic and less like we're on this treadmill and we can't get off?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of that is unplugging from the pings and dings and all of that, and I know my nervous system reset app is an app, but one of the beauties about it is that you can put it in your pocket. You don't have to actually look at it when you use it.
Right.
And but aside from that, we are bombarded with flashes and with sounds and with screens and with notifications. And if you think about from an evolutionary standpoint, what our fight or flight system was meant to do, it was meant to help you survive from the saber-toothed tiger, from the bear. And now that is the pings and the dings and
Yes.
and our emails. And it's all these things that our body doesn't realize it's not actually a saber-toothed tiger, but it feels like the same threat response because our body is responding in the same way. And so we need to unplug and detox from that. We need to be out in nature more, and we need to be in person with people more because we are neurobiologically wired to connect, and our nervous systems, because we are quote unquote pack animals, we co-regulate. And so when I'm around other people and I'm going to feed off and people who I trust and love and feel safe with, I'm going to have a more regulated nervous system. And so the human side of AI and surviving that is the in-person component.
Yeah. You and I just had one of those experiences together that just, it was phenomenal because again, we're still coming out of the pandemic. There's still that hangover of people being isolated by being forced to isolate. And there's if you go on any of the social feeds, there's a big argument over return to office versus working from home and a hybrid approach. And that plays into things too, is there is power in being in an office where that energy can be exchanged. And there's also power in if you can be productive. For some people, they do much better when they're not around other people and they can focus. And so again, it is that self-awareness piece, is know who you are and what works for you. And if things aren't working, do a little digging around to find out who could help you do that nervous system reset, or maybe there is an event you haven't been to one for a while, or a group that you could join where you would be able to get that in-person energy.
Yeah.
It's, I agree. You can't beat it. You come out of those things just feeling like everything is full again and there's possibility instead of being affected by the pings and the dings and that feed that goes by when we're scrolling all the time. It
And
really
the
does.
screens, the interacting with people through screens, that isn't enough.
It's
And
not.
even from a physiological level, we don't get the oxytocin that we get when
Mm-mm.
we're in person. And oxytocin is the bonding chemical and
Right.
our feel good chemicals, that hormones that we have. We don't get that like we get it through screens as we do in person. And so we can't be fooled by that. Solitary there's a reason why solitary confinement is the worst punishment we can get. And we're living in this sort of world that is making us believe we're connected. But the pandemic showed us that when we became more connected, because we had to be, through the internet and through work from home and all these things, is when rates of depression got the highest. And so we can't be fooled by thinking we're connected because we see each other through screens.
Amen. They serve a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
They do serve a purpose. And I'm grateful. I have been grateful to be able to connect with my kids with FaceTime.
Mm-hmm.
They're on one side of the country. I know a lot of people, but
Yeah.
if there's one takeaway here, what I'm hearing you say is find opportunities to be in person with others as much as you can.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as we round the corner here to what's been truth bombs, Mandy, you are so wise and you have so much to share. And you really are working in a field that is so fascinating to me because it was not something I learned in school. And I think that's another reason why I think podcasts like this and conversations like this and the work you're doing, this is representing how we learn now to move forward. Like learning doesn't stop just because you have the terminal degree, whether it's your diploma from high school or your PhD. We have to continue to invest in ourselves to learn about this amazing body we inhabit for a very short time in the grand scheme of things. And also what's going on up here. This is our control center,
Yep.
right? And it does there is that body mind connection, that the somatic. And you're right. A lot of people, I see it all the time when I'm out in public, how many people are clearly disconnected from their physiology. You can see it in their posture. You can see it on their face. It just breaks my heart. Like at what point did people just stop paying attention
Mm-hmm.
to this magnificent vessel we get to inhabit and use to serve, which is what you do, Who influences you to serve better? Books you've read that you could recommend, maybe a couple. Are there podcasts that you love to listen to? I could put a plug in for our legendary group that we're a part of that certainly feeds our souls. But what does Mandy do on a daily basis to continue to just fill that cup?
Yeah. Well, aside from your wonderful books and podcasts, which I do love, and yes, big shout out to Tommy Breedlove and the legendary team for their wonderful community and connection, and that's been such a great community to be a part of. So, being a part of great communities like that, I'm big into podcasts like Tim Ferriss and Diary of a CEO. There's different healing podcasts and psychology podcasts that I love. A book I recommend called Reboot by Jerry Colonna. That's a great book
Never heard of that one. I
great
love
book
it.
for leaders. It's called Reboot: Leadership and the Art of Growing Up. Awesome book. Let's see what else. Anything by the author Parker Palmer is great. Tara Brock, who is in the therapy world as well. So my morning times, as busy as I am, that's my sacred time. That's when I don't let I don't let anything touch that. And that's when I do my reading and podcast and exercise and nature time and all of that stuff. So I
Nice.
encourage people to make sure you know when you need your time and keep boundaries around that.
Oh, boundaries. Absolutely, boundaries. Awesome. So for people who'd like to learn more about you, the Internal Edge, the So Free app, give us the details. Where do you hang out online? How can people get into your world?
Yeah, thank you. Well, and first, before I share that, thank you for having me on, MaryLou. You are a brilliant person, a wise human, and you are doing great work with what you are talking about and writing about. And I feel very honored just to even be in your sphere. So thank you for letting me be on your show. But people can find me at mandymorris.com. There's a link to the Internal Edge on my website, as well as for So Free. And so you can go there to find both of those things. You can also go to getsofree.com. And again, the app is free. Download it. If you feel so inclined, leave us a review. We're trying to get the word out there and get users and spread it around. So thank you.
Yeah. And bring some much needed, just coming down from the chaos in people's daily life, or even just a couple of times a week. It can make a difference.
Yep.
The nervous system reset is a powerful thing.
Yep.
And before we say goodbye, first of all, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to share your journey with me and Team PYP here. It means a lot. What's one thing you want to leave us with that you didn't mention or would like to just kick us out into the world with something?
I would say that, if anything, my hope for people is that they really slow down and take their inner world seriously, that they recognize that they are not broken, that they don't have problems, they have patterns. And that the more they increase their self-awareness and understanding, and insight isn't enough. We have to integrate, these skills into our life. But the more that you do that, the more you actually get back to who you really are. And that's a really beautiful thing, because we need people to be who they are so that they can use their own unique gifts and talents to be in the world and do the work they're supposed to do.
The Play Your Position podcast is produced by the fantastic Daniel Ramirez, aka Dr. Podcasts. Interested in your own algorithm reset? Visit MaryLouKaiser.com for the book, the toolkit, and ways to work with me. Until next time, remember, it's always a great day to get out there to play your position and live like you mean it.
Here at the Play Your Position podcast, we believe that the road to self-mastery and a life well lived starts with answering the call to leadership. That's when the fun really begins. Send this episode to any friends who might need to hear the inspiration and ideas you heard today. And feel free to rate and review us on your favorite podcast platform.